Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to TechCentral. Bret Lenmark from BigFix, sitting all the way over in Portland, Oregon. Welcome to TechCentral this morning. Praven
Good to be here. Thank you, James.
Thank you very much. Praven Pillay, welcome also, but from South Africa. Good evening to you. Very much looking forward to getting stuck into this conversation. Really interesting partnership that's being created here. I'd like to just jump straight in, if you don't mind, and talk about the importance of security, but also really importantly, how the benefits and the development that BigFix have brought to this industry are going to revolutionize the way in which fixes are done. And without further ado, Bret, can I hand over to you, please?
I'd be honored. So I am Bret Lenmark. I am Director of Product Marketing here at BigFix. I've been in cybersecurity for 15 or 20 years now, and I guess I really enjoy this role because not only can I focus on real problems that are occurring in the field, but I can bring novel solutions. Typically, I work in positioning, messaging, and enablement, and I lead a small team here at BigFix that launches, that messages, and positions our products. So thank you for the invitation to be here. Very pleased to be partnering with Maxtec in South Africa, and primarily because the problems are real and the challenges have money tied to them. And when that happens, behavior happens quickly. Some of the challenges that I'd bring up would be things that are hopefully common to you, but there's so many devices that are coming online with different operating languages, different locations, different classifications, different geographies and such. People are crying out to me daily and saying, I need help with this. I've got the same amount of staff as I had last year, and I've got more endpoints to cover and manage and make sure that are secure. And fundamentally, they're asking for one thing. They're asking for help to do tomorrow what they're doing today with less risk. How can I manage my endpoints to that end? So it's a really rewarding position to be in because every day is brand new. And I'm so honored to be partnering with Maxtec in South Africa and helping solve problems in that region of the world. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell. Does it make sense, James?
It does. Thank you, Bret. And I was just reading that IBM Security conducted an in-depth analysis of data breaches experienced specifically by South African organizations. And they were saying that daily, an organization is confronted by vulnerabilities that they can't remediate. Up to 48% of those vulnerabilities are the most expensive to remediate because they're within the organization or malicious attacks on their own customers, on their employees, and indeed their most sensitive asset, their own corporate data.
Right, James. We found the same thing. I'd be interested to know Praven's validation with that as well.
Yeah, Praven, please shed some light on the situation here in South Africa.
Thank you, James and Bret. Just intro for myself. It's Praven from Maxtec. I'm the managing director. Maxtec, has been in operation for the past 36 years. And certainly from a data storage company, it has evolved into security and today into a cybersecurity company. And I think it's so exciting partnering with BigFix purely because we've been providing next generation solutions for more than 22 years. And yes, it is the early warning system and, customers can put down SIEM solutions. But what we're also finding is it's too late because the SIEM is telling you that somebody has already been compromised. Now, the partnership with BigFix is here we're going to find the vulnerability, we're going to find the patch that needs to be remediated, and it's all automated, number one. Number two, it's not a manual process. If we look at any organization, no matter how small, big, there's always a human factor, and that human factor cannot do it fast enough, number one. Number two, it's also room for errors. So the BigFix and what we've been seeing for the last couple of months, maybe in some cases have systems to, like if you've got a Microsoft operating system, they've got WSUS. And it takes care of all the Windows or the Microsoft applications. But what about the applications that are not Microsoft? A simple example would be Adobe. And we find customers are doing that manually. Now, if you just think about working from home, number one, you're not getting any of those updates. And number two, with the limited workforce, because resources is a huge issue at a global level. And this is what BigFix brings to the party to help automate in a full 360.
Thanks, Praven. If I can just jump in there, I think what you also point out is there are multiple operating systems that one could be practicing these techniques and risk mitigation on. And typically, we probably plan for Windows 10, an operating system like Mac. Where else are we finding vulnerabilities in the South African market?
Well, the biggest form we see is ransomware coming through mail and any other application. So, I used Adobe as an example, but it's most web browsers, including Microsoft web browsers. We're constantly seeing patches on a weekly basis, if not more.
What about mobile?
Absolutely. And if you think about on our desktops and laptops, there is some sort of next generation endpoint. But on your mobile phone, I don't think there's any security. And that's the biggest, the biggest threat.
Bret, what do you say to that?
Yeah, if I can build on that, you're absolutely right, is you can't secure and you can't manage what you can't see. So by the extension of the typical desktop, laptop, and now we think about cloud, other repositories that we access, people are asking us to include mobile in that assessment and that understanding of what the IT infrastructure looks like. Because in the past, it was siloed where you may have had your cloud, your desktop instances here on your premise, but you would manage your mobile instances in another area. And we're knocking down those because the threats do not distinguish between how they get in from an endpoint, from a cloud perspective, from a thumb drive someone plugs into the side to a mobile device. And what we're finding is that there's three things that people are seeking to unify. It's the team itself. How can I get the most out of my team and not have siloed teams that do the same thing for different targets? Also, the processes, how we do it and how we can learn from one process to the other, how we can learn how a threat might propagate and how we can stop it, no matter if it's in a Linux or a Mac device or a Windows device, anything like that. And the last one is the tools. No one wants to have to buy another tool because it does the same function for a different target, for example, mobile. So we found in our research that half of our customers were looking to streamline their client with the mobile management. They're looking to reduce the number of tools so that they don't have to have another learning curve in order to understand what the best way to distribute patches are. And lastly, they're looking for one, and this is an overused term, so forgive me, one pane of glass, one monitor that they can look and see their entire infrastructure and know that they can, forgive me for using a BigFix term, but distribute a fixlet, which is the way that we send out fixes, as the name would imply, to distribute patches, to update OSs, all the things you would need to do to be secure across your entire infrastructure, no matter the geographic location, no matter the operating system. Is it on your desk? Is it in the cloud? Is it in your pocket? People want one tool to do that. So again, it's people, tools, and processes.
Thanks, Bret. And I think what you're doing is you're aligning that security and operations from a teaming perspective. You're reducing the enterprise security risk by consolidation. But I pick up the phone and I say, Praven, let's put it practically here, urgent. We've discovered a vulnerability. What next?
So, James, I think the point that you're raising is normally a post-mortem. Where we actually typically begin off, we start off with the assessment. Because you're quite right, customers don't know the exact amount of devices that is running in their environment, whether it be at the head office, in their data centers, or even in remote locations. And using BigFix tools, one of the offerings is an inventory. So again, it's that single pane of glass that we can log on and we can see a list of operating systems, of applications, and you can sort them via operating system if you like. We can then also understand the list of patches that is required for that.
Okay, and that gives you an insight into the triage. What level needs to be addressed first?
Absolutely. So with other solutions, you would run a vulnerability scan, you'll get the list of vulnerabilities, and that's where it stops. And this is now where BigFix now picks up on those vulnerabilities and actually applies those patches, those updates, and covers any vulnerabilities that is left exposed. It's able to do a discovery, identify, patch, and it's doing all of this automatically. And this is the automation that is built into a BigFix. So if you think about what we said in the beginning, you get complete visibility, you get the control, and yes, you do get a report of was it successful, was it not successful? And this is the biggest pane of glass that we like to see is you can log on to this platform and understand where the gaps is. Maybe there were a few devices that were not covered because maybe they weren't connected or they missed those type of updates. And yes, as soon as they come online, the agent would detect them and immediately start patching them based on severity, based on the policy that we've defined.
I think Praven really nailed it. Is what we're finding is the need for automation is not for automation's sake and it's state that we do less work. It's really to move the needle for changing key metrics that are KPIs or key performance indicators for security and operations teams. And the one that occurred and distilled up last year was the time between discovery of a potential threat and the remediation of a potential threat. And the reason, as Praven pointed out, it takes so long is one, it's a lot of work. You have to correlate, make sure you've got the latest solution and patch that you're applying and not just the one that was easy to find. But then you've got to distribute them. And as Praven pointed out, also, what if someone's offline? Does that then keep the vulnerability open? And are you therefore at risk? And how do you manage through that? So the answer that we launched last year, mid-year, was a product called Insights for Vulnerability Remediation. And while that's a mouthful, what it does fundamentally is it shrinks the gap between the results that the scanning engine finds and the patch that you remediate with. And to quantify that, realistically, we've gone from weeks and oftentimes months to days and oftentimes hours. So let me give you a real life example of how this looks. Typically, the security analyst does a scan of the environment. It comes with a whole litany of items that are vulnerable, no matter where it's located, no matter what OS it is. And then he has the challenge of getting that to the operations team. And it's oftentimes a very manual process, sometimes an email of a spreadsheet that has thousands of line items that are unprioritized. So how do I know what to do first? And how do I know what the most nefarious of these threats might be? So fortunately, Insights for Vulnerability automates that, as Praven points out. So you can scale your team to meet the needs of your infrastructure, no matter how big. It's an API-driven process that takes the scan results and it correlates the fixlets to actually prioritize and distribute those fixes. And then, as Praven also points out, you can then run a report and say, here's where we were before, here's where we were after. And I've seen clients of mine take that report when it comes down to evaluation time. It says, here, boss, here's what I've done. Here's where we were vulnerable. Here's where we are. How about my raise and promotion? So it gets very real when it comes down to how we can cultivate professional engagements and ongoing evolution through the team. People who use BigFix love it. And our net promoter scores reflect that. So again, Insights for Vulnerability Remediation is designed to reduce the time between discovery and remediation by using automation and APIs. A lot of those Asians there, forgive me, but that's really what it does fundamentally. It's a great product. People are loving it, and it's worth its weight in gold.
Bret, thank you very much. And I can clearly see why you've partnered with Maxtec. I can see why you're coming to spend more time in Africa. We look forward to hosting you here on our shores. Praven, is there anything you'd like to add to that before we sort of wrap up? Because I think I've got one last thing I'd like to say, but I'd like you to...
Yeah, thanks, James. I think Bret covers it, and you can see how passionate he is about it. But just back to the point about customers and how often they do these scans. Most enterprises scan twice a year. And normally it's before an audit and it's after an audit. And the big scary thing is what actually happens after that, because the vulnerabilities are coming out on a daily basis. They're far too sophisticated. They avoid normal detection systems or next generation scanners. And, you know, the idea about BigFix and the automation is not to replace anybody's job, but like we're talking about thousands of vulnerabilities that is found. It's like finding a needle in a haystack. So using the AI is to help simplify and give your IT personnel time to actually concentrate and focus on their job instead of finding a needle in a haystack.
I think on that note, what you've really implied here, and the two of you have made it very clear to me and practical to me as a listener, is that what you're really doing is reducing that time whilst I could be highly exposed and vulnerable. We use that word a lot. You're reducing that time, and that is the measure of success I'm going to hold you to. So,
spot on, James.
Praven Pillay, Managing Director of Maxtec here in South Africa, and Bret Lenmark, the Product Marketing Director of BigFix, all the way over in Portland, Oregon. Thank you very much for an incredibly insightful and enjoyable conversation. I think there's a lot more we still need to unpack here, that's for sure. But I definitely know that there's a level of comfort that the two experts have brought to me today. So thank you very much for your time and your insights and for sharing such passion.
It's been an honor, James. Thanks, Praven.
Thank you, James and Bret.
And from me, James Erasmus at TechCentral, enjoy the rest of your day.